Right, here I am. I'm a couple of minutes late. I apologise. I feel very out of practice. I feel like I haven't done a live stream from home for some time now. So here goes. And I'm not feeling the greatest. I'm a little under the weather, she said, making excuses. But hi Martin. Right, so let's have it. Sorry if I'm a bit breathless whilst I'm speaking through my notes, but let's have a go anyway, because why not? Uh, yeah, hi, I'm good. Okay, so if I could find the notes, that would always, it's quite a help oftentimes. I got them. So I can still see the chat anyway. So the broad question is, why does the church exist? And we're going to have a look at some analogies and some verses and some reasoning, hopefully. So if you think of an athlete, even like a bodybuilder, a weightlifter, if they were to only if they were to work solely on their legs or solely on their arms, for example, they wouldn't develop what we would call physical symmetry. They would be lopsided, imbalanced, not quite right. And in extreme cases, you can witness quite grotesque distortions of physicality. So in a way that is similar, but not at all, if that makes sense, a church that pursues just one focus or one purpose and neglects others tends to, well, they have their phone muted probably for a start, but what they tend to do is mutate, I guess, into something that was not in the original plan or design for the church. And unfortunately, it seems, unless you're really guarded against it, lopsided churches tend to churn out lopsided congregants or people. So, okay, so what is the church's purpose? I'm going to ignore the live chat for a second, and I hope my admins will do the same just while we can stick with this topic. So the purpose of the church. So firstly, we recognize that God did, and Christ did design the church for a certain purpose, not merely, I don't know, cake baking or whatever you may think about when it comes to churches, but there is a specific intent, and the intent was not a religious bureaucracy. It wasn't a hierarchy that exists only to, like, I don't know, aggrandize itself or to just perpetuate itself, really. Jesus, the people who followed Jesus, rather, whilst he was on earth, were the first in a series of those commanded to fulfill the commission, his mission. And when churches lose the sense of direction that gives us, then it certainly shows. And it doesn't matter how many people they have in the audiences. It doesn't, what matters is the preaching and the intent of the heart behind it, I guess, and what's received by others. So God's purpose for, sorry, my notes are just, can I be bothered? Yes, she said willingly, she can be bothered. I just scooted up so far through my own notes because it's a long story. But meanwhile, you may just have visions of like Joel Osteen in your mind, or any of those other, let's call them people. Right, so let me scoot back to, right, now I can't see the chat and I don't actually care because now I can navigate my notes properly. Right. No, and I'm still in the wrong place. Chit chat among yourselves. This is going swimmingly, as per usual. And I didn't pray first. And somebody literally just reminded me, and anywho, here we are, and here we shall stay. So this is the purpose for the church. It can be expressed as, within four demographics, I guess. The purposes are God, first and foremost, the lost, the saved, and those in need. And that could be spiritually needy or, in physical need, i.e. the poor, the hungry, etc. So the responsibility towards God in all things, not just the church, the first responsibility is to worship God. And he chose us for the praise of his glory, says Ephesians 1:11-12. And what we can, congregational singing, as it were, worship, praise and worship, sets a tone for the proclamation of the word. But that's not to demote or to say that worship is not the end game in and of itself, if that makes sense. So acknowledging, wow, there's too much to acknowledge, but acknowledging the rightful place, the worth, it sounds ridiculous saying it, of Christ, it's not a warm-up act like to the actual worship, as it were, because worship is a temporal affair. It's a moment by moment reality and a connection between us and God. Fellowship is something that facilitates. I mean, Christ says, when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I shall be also. So fellowship has a distinct place within the worship of God, as opposed to contemplative prayer or solitary pursuits, which are just as valid and like just as in need of worship of God. It needs to be a continual attitude, obviously, not just a Sunday or a Saturday, depending, or whatever day you choose to go. You may go every day. I don't really know what your situation is. You may be in a country where you're unable to go outside to a physical church, as it were, a church building. But the attitude of being Christ-like and obeying the 2 commandments, that, spoiler alert, it's love, is something that is not just restricted, obviously, to church. And if we don't worship, for one, we're missing out on like a real-time interaction, and it's a reciprocal arrangement. And by that, I do not mean that God worships us in return. Like, we're not talking about Allah, like praying to whomever. We're talking about the feeling of having your purpose fulfilled for that moment, and the fruits of the Spirit that, as a result of which you're able to worship, and which you receive as the result of worshiping. Joy is what I'm driving at, if you missed it. And then we move on to the lost. So our responsibility towards the lost, and of course I mean spiritually lost. Christ spoke of the commission, the mission, however you want to describe it, to the lost. He spoke of the lost before he spoke of the Great Commission, which is in Matthew 28:19-20, just if anyone's taking notes. So earlier on within his earthly ministry, he told his disciples that he would redirect the target of their fishing from actual fish to men. He says this it's recorded that he says this in Luke 5:1-11. And he later tells them to bring in a spiritual harvest, and that's recorded in Matthew 9:37-38. So his mission of preaching to the lost is not optional for any of us, for any of his followers, which is us, hopefully, for those watching. So individually, it can be challenging, it can be disappointing, it can be like edifying beyond belief, it can be frustrating, embarrassing. Just a whole raft of emotions go along with trying to, in a solitary pursuit of the commission. However, it can also be the most rewarding thing you can do. Like, to know that somebody is now safe, as it were, safe from damnation and the wrath of God, and also happier, hopefully, within themselves. So also corporately, like as a body, which we are, we should intentionally seek out the lost with the gospel, with the good news of salvation and the grace that we receive in Christ. And then we have a responsibility. I don't say that these are apart from God at the top and worship. these aren't in a particular order, but towards the saved, towards our brethren, our fellows, as it were, the other people who claim salvation within our church. And we are the church, but I mean the church building. If you don't go to church, to be honest, like that's your own personal choice. I've had times in my walk with Christ where I didn't go to church, and I have times where I do. And I can say that I prefer the times when I do, but it all rather depends on the building that you're going to and the other people, because other people, well, there's a philosopher who tells us what other people are, but yeah, it can be a challenge. But nobody said it was going to be easy, so buckle up and I don't know, visit a few churches and see when you get the tingle, you know you're in the right one. Either way, the church's purpose collectively includes also those who are found. You've got those who are lost, and those who are found. And I'm not going to break into Amazing Grace. So the commission calls us to make disciples of all nations, but the discipleship part is learning, is an apprenticeship to Christ. And I guess the manual for that is obviously the New Testament, the Bible. So churches who emphasize preaching to the lost and yet neglect the spiritual edification or growth of their current congregants have just fallen short of the mark, as it were. Spiritual birth, when Christ speaks about being born of water and of the Spirit, that's a birth, that's an infancy. And the milk of the scripture and the meat of the scripture and the fruits of the Spirit and the gifts of the Spirit that are to be like discerned, once and when they come along. One often needs other Christians in order to ascertain discernment. So we need each other, and we need to not just focus on maybe polemicizing atheism or Islam, or those are all also valid causes, definitely. And the fact that Paul speaks about different members of the body, as it were, having different roles works out perfectly, because some of us are better at arguing than we are at diplomacy. Like, do you know anyone like that? I just thought of myself. But yeah, so we've all got different gifts, and when we work in harmony, in unity, as it were, they come to fruition much more easily, and obviously with the help of the Holy Spirit. So Paul was pretty obsessed for a time with presenting everybody perfect, or like mature, as it were, grown in Christ. And that's referenced in Colossians 1, verse 28. And God gave spiritual gifts, and continues to give, to grow the saints, as it were. And by saints, I mean those who are saved, those who are sanctified, is where the word comes from. So and that's Ephesians 4:12-13. Until Christ is formed in you, says Galatians 4:19. And Galatians is the book that contains the fruits of the Spirit. It's one of my favourite. I've got loads of one of my favourites, but I say that one regularly when I'm praying. So then we come along, not penultimately, lastly, to responsibility towards the needy. And you may remember Christ saying, the poor will always be with you. I mean, he wasn't talking about socialism, I wouldn't have thought. So the church's mandate is to love, full stop, but also to love the needy specifically, to do good for those in need, and to be merciful to them. And that's Luke 6:35-36. Some churches, it's nice to be charitable. Some churches turn inwards, very inwards, insular. I'm not talking denominations, I'm just saying this happens. And they see only their own needs, and they appear to be aloof or cold or just blind to the plight of literally those on their doorstep sometimes, but mostly like just outside. And I just thought, I don't even know if I want to think of it as a church, but I just thought of an example in some horrific like weather conditions in America, where a massive church didn't open its doors after a hurricane. Like just said, oh well, like had all the space, etc. And it's just like, at that point to me anyway, it was just startlingly obvious that they either never had or had forgotten the example of Christ. So they miss an opportunity at any rate, without ascribing intent or malice or forethought. They miss an opportunity to display to those who are lost, like those we've referenced already, and those outside of the sphere of this church at least, a way of reconciliation with God, offered by Christ. All of the things that we hear in the mainstream, all of the I don't know, the critical consciousness stuff, the race, the gender, the color, the sexuality, all of those things can be removed as an issue, certainly, as we bring in the grace of Christ to the twaddle, quite frankly, of human tensions and political narratives and nonsense. An engagement with outside of the church, as it were, doesn't replace preaching or evangelism, as it were, but it does go hand in hand with sharing the gospel. Because, for example, whilst I was away recently, rather than a church service on a designated church day, we went out and did some outreach. So we still basically had the service outside, but we're also feeding some people who were in between accommodations, as it were. So churches, they need to blend those multiple purposes and mission statements, because they've got others. Churches do some absolutely amazing social work, as it were, and they have done in this country, at least in England, since way before the welfare system was ever dreamt of, before there was any such thing as welfare, when there were still workhouses, which we had, which was basically, I think prisoners were ever so slightly better off than the poor in the workhouses, at least in terms of their life expectancy. The parish was responsible for, if somebody fell on really destitute times, they would be sent back to the parish of their birth, who would, go to a board of trustees and ask them for some couple of pennies and some bread or whatever it was in those times. But the church has been doing social work since before social work was even, before social sciences were a thing. And a well-rounded or a healthy church, or a church that is in its true purpose, will not become so enamored of one of these sections, if any of the main four that I've just kind of briefly outlined, to the detriment of the others. Because Christ he didn't just feed the poor and refuse to heal lepers, and he didn't just raise people from the dead, but refused to rebuke the Pharisees, as it were. He had, he had all bases covered, because, spoiler alert, he's God. So as congregants and as the true church, as it were, our spiritual gifts should, once they're merged together with our brothers and sisters, should result in an integrated church life, which is edifying, worshipful, impactful in terms of those who are not within our ranks, as it were, and also preach Christ crucified, and the salvation that comes through grace. And all of this should be to the glory of God, as I said earlier. That's our ultimate purpose, full stop, like Bob's your uncle. So I guess it's just to be mindful that we don't present to the world a lopsided caricature of God's church, because no matter which church you belong to, if indeed you do belong to one, you belong to the church, which is us. But the church building or the denomination that you ascribe to, even within massive churches, there are still some churches that fall short and others that do much better. And I would suggest it's not really based too heavily on doctrine. Also, you can have some just wonderful priests or vicars or pastors, and then when they sadly pass away and somebody else comes along, you just feel the difference within the building even. So that's what I have to say about that. Have a think about it. Like I said, if you don't go, what's the worst? Well, don't tempt fate, or don't tempt God either. Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? So I'm going to come back now so that I can see the screen. You all right, Bill? Yeah, I just wondered, does anybody have any questions? Because that was quite short, and even though I'm a little poorly, I could stomach like 5-10 mins, but I don't have to. So yeah, anyone with any like questions potentially related to the video would be lovely as well, like not just random. I don't mind actually, as long as they're like sensible. But you also don't have to feel pressured into asking anything at all. And always you can comment and ask questions in there. You're right, Jeff. No, questiones. I'm requesting questiones, literally. So, but obviously, don't feel obliged because, Hi, Paul. I remember you. I think I remember your. Yes, I do. In a comment section some time ago in a live chat that I was in. Nice to see you. So, you may have to put question at the front if you are, because I see loads of writing, to be fair. But, oh, that's nice, Tyler. Tyler's been amazed at some of the services offered by churches. I mean, services as in social services, not as in the sermon. But some of those are pretty spectacular as well. I very much appreciate my own church. I went to a different church while I was away. It was not like I don't find fault with it, but it was utterly different. Like it was a different end of the same spectrum, and I was comfortable when I attended my own again. Paul, I may very well celebrate. Oh my gosh, Septuagesima, if I knew what it was. Something to do with 7, because the Septuagint is the book of the 70. So I've got that far in the. I don't know what it is, Paul. If you want to explain, I wouldn't have thought I celebrated it without knowing what it is, but you never know. You never know. Oh, do you know what, Bill? You are a superstar, because what I got in the post, I haven't even opened it because I've been a little bit unwell. But it may well have something about it in there, because this stuff I ordered from Open Doors. So I've got, this is the new stuff, obviously, because last year I would have done something similar. I don't think I opened it on a live stream last time. But let me just see what else. Is that all I ordered? Like as in that thing alone? Well, let's find out. Maybe I did. Let me just have a dig around. No, they are copies. Okay, so I'll just look in the one. So this, I don't know if I'm mirrored at the moment. Oh, it's such a shame if I am. Yes, I am. Anyhow, it's the World Watch List for 2022. And this is the top 50 countries where following Christ costs like a lot. It costs more than, it costs most anyway of the world. So let's have a little butchers, which means look, if you're from London. Right, so I might as well just read you a bit if you don't mind. I don't know if you mind. If you do mind, sorry about that. So hang on a minute. Let's just, because there's always okay. Oh gosh. All right, I'll read this. This is Afghanistan, actually. Yeah, sorry about my pronunciation, by the way, as it's before it comes. So everything beautiful is considered infidel, says Sharifullah, which is, I'm not even going to look to the bottom. I know that's an assumed name. So a traditional craftsman in Afghanistan, Sharifullah's business came to a standstill when the Taliban returned to power. The Taliban want their ideology reflected everywhere, and so all signs of colour, life, and hope have been removed. Can you imagine? The Taliban are killing our souls and spirits, says Sharifullah. They are killing the souls of our children by taking all that is beautiful away from them. Sharifullah has good reason to fear the Taliban. He and his wife are secret Christians. So if you don't know, secret Christians are, it does what it says on the tin, nobody knows they're Christians. The Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan has propelled the country to number one. Gosh, that's like number one has been held by North Korea for the longest time, 20 years, 20 plus years. So I was like pretty stunned when I saw that, even though I'd obviously followed what was going on in Afghanistan, I still didn't expect them to top the list. Either way, they're now in the rankings. They're number one for the persecution of Christians in all of the 5 spheres that they use to assess the scoring system. So the country was number 2 under the previous regime, but the Taliban takeover has made like just basically a terrible situation even worse. What little progress the country had made in terms of human rights has been reversed. No surprise. And for Christians, life is just more dangerous than ever, if you can believe it. If they are discovered, they are just killed. There's no faffing around like North Korea, internment camps and stuff like that. Nope, just dead. So, Sharifullah and his fellow believers have not given up. And that's quite important. Like I know everything's subjective. I know that if you feel depressed, it doesn't help or hinder you to know that there are people worse off, like it's irrelevant because it's not within your sphere of subjectivity. But if you imagine, like I've read and seen the most amazing stories of courage, like in the face of imminent death, like to not recant their faith, to, like to keep on. It reminds me a little bit of Blandina, like in the arena there where she was in Lyon, like being tortured remorselessly, wild animals, and having like bones broken and thrown in front of carts and stuff, but still just preaching Christ crucified and not, cheerfully, as it were. So, like, maybe it will put some of your sufferings into perspective. If it does, like, praise God. If it doesn't, like, I'll pray for you, definitely, if they're that bad. So they've chosen to carry on with their secret ministry. Not only are they secret Christians, but they're secretly ministering to others at just such an increased rate of being found out and summarily executed, obviously. We will never let that hope be silenced, he adds. We will make sure the world hears the gospel through every breath we take. And we know you will help us by living the gospel and using your freedom and sharing Jesus. So please continue to stand with us, is what he asks. Jesus came to us in a dream, they say, and opened up our imagination. It is a door that has been opened that can never be closed. And that's a phenomena that's pretty commonplace, actually, unusual, and yet I've read many, many testimonies of people dreaming of Christ, and like especially in Islamic, I don't know where my admin is, but I'll just okay that myself then. In Islamic countries having these visions and dreams. So then there's a small informational box and it just says what's happening around the world. The Taliban has taken control in Afghanistan, spoiler alert, boosting the morale, quite frankly, of extremists everywhere, even those who oppose the Taliban. The global church is increasingly a refugee church. Many, many of the top 50 countries have thousands upon thousands of internally displaced peoples made up by majority Christians because of attacks, especially Nigeria, especially like Niger and Chad. Africa is what I'm aiming at, basically. China is increasing centralized control of religion. I don't know if you remember, I made a few videos on it, actually. Something like, I don't know, what the heck is going on in China was one of them. But it's not good. They've rewritten parts of the Bible. They've made Jesus out to be a murderer, if you're not too shy. They've torn down images, put up pictures of Xi Jinping. The CCP have raided mothers' meetings, prayer meetings, excuse me. It's not good over there at all. And the church continues to be hit by restrictions and mandates, surrounding this COVID situation, which allows corrupt governments and gangs, quite frankly, to exploit the situation for their own ends. Excuse me. No, Emmanuel. Right. Let me just see. Shall I? Shan't I? I want to read you one more thing. It's all good. I'm going to take some of these to Speaker's Corner on Sunday. Obviously, that's a long walk if you're in like North America or, I don't know, Indonesia. But you can. I'll tell you what I'll do. This is what I will do for you people. So you may remember sometime late last year, I was asking for people to join me writing letters to the persecuted church. So I know you did it. Well, I did anyway. And at that time, I may also have told you about the resources that you can get there. So even if you go on the UK one, I think that's fine. And then when you get there, I feel like there will be an international flag sign or something where you can scoot over to the version that's relevant to your own country. Although, of course, Canada will be .ca, and then there's like .us and .coms all over the place, and I don't know, .de for Germany, etc. However, get to the point, okay? www.opendoorsuk.org. This is the one that I used. So that's open as in not closed, doors as in not windows, UK as in not Mike, .org. And once you go on there, if you click on resources, they're free anyway. And they're really quite, last year's one came with a map, like a pull-out map. This one does too. Oh my gosh. So let's have a little butcher's again with the Cockney. Oh yeah, something else I forgot to tell you all. Well, no, I've mentioned it before. The top 50 countries now are made up solely of high to extreme levels of persecution. If you look, even though it's going to be reversed for you, if you just see the colour coding, like as in the red and the dark red, it used to contain some amber countries. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there used to be within the top 50 mild levels of persecution or mid-range levels. But now, as I said, we have only very high and extreme. And these are the top 50. I'll just reel these off. Thank you, Emmanuel. Right, I'll just reel these off for you because I just hate it. Like, I don't hate people ever, but I very much detest the fact that I know somebody in one of these countries and they said to me once they felt like they'd been forgotten, and it just stuck with me, and it just, yeah. Okay, so should we do it in reverse order? Like some horrific top of the pops. Like, oh my gosh, like a DJ now. Okay, so at number 50 is Malaysia. At number 49 is Kuwait. Number 48 is Nepal. Number 47, Kazakhstan. 46, Brunei. 45, Tajikistan. 44, Cameroon. Stop me when you hear one that's not Islamic, I'm joking. 43, Mexico. Yay, there we got one. 42, Turkey. 41, Mozambique. 40, the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, I should say. 39 is Jordan. 38 is Ethiopia. Things have gotten pretty horrific there recently, or relatively recently, I should say. 37 is Cuba. Oman is at 36. Tunisia is 35. Bhutan is 34. Niger, which you'll hear me speak about semi-regularly, is at 33. Burkina Faso, if you've seen my videos before, you've heard me speak about that area. 31, the Central African Republic. In 30 is Colombia. 29 is Bangladesh. Bangladesh has gone up. I'm not seeing the stats in front of me, just from my memory, they've gone up pretty sharply as well in terms of the persecution of Christians. Indonesia, God bless them, is at 28. 27 is Morocco, and Laos is at 26, so we're getting there. 25, Turkmenistan. Mali is at 24. Mauritania is 23. Algeria at 22. Uzbekistan is 21, and Egypt is at number 20. It's pretty bad in Egypt as well. So I don't know if you remember Nabil. He was like a 62-year-old, like aged gentleman who was shot in the back of the head while he was kneeling in one of those like grotesque music video looking terrorist propaganda things. That was pretty distressing to watch. I remember at the time. Yeah, and his crime was colluding with his own government. Like they accused him of feeding info to like the authorities. Where were we? 19 is Vietnam, which is ironic considering the music video, but let's not go there. Qatar is at 18. China is at 17. China has been a long-standing violator of the rights of humans, let alone Christians. And they're only at 17. So you can just imagine, like, everybody on this list is at high risk, high to extreme risk. Every Christian, I should say. The Maldives is at 16. Syria is 15. Iraq is at 14. Sudan is 13. Number 12 is Myanmar. They've got some shizzle going down there. Like, it's really not good. Number 11 is Saudi Arabia. They, I imagine they will fall a little more, seeing as how MBS has just gone a bit mental, as it were. And now we get to the top 10. So India suffers, as it were, with the massive amounts of persecution, but mainly from nationalists who are Hindu in origin. Iran is number 9. Pakistan is number 8. I should add at this point that these are not, like, for example, Nigeria is number 7. However, Nigeria is number 1 in terms of the risk of being outright killed for confessing Christ. But once they factor in personal life, private life, religious life, can't remember, like financial, and other, ways in which Christians are oppressed, they come out only at number 7. But if you want to talk numbers of like just getting killed, they're at number 1. Eritrea is at number 6 in the overall top 50. Yemen is at 5. Libya is number 4. And then the top 3 offenders, as it were, are Somalia, not really a massive surprise, bunch of nutters. North Korea, you know the ones, little fat guy. And number 1 is Afghanistan. So I know you're not going to remember all those. Maybe what I'll do is I'll link. Oh, she loves promising stuff, this chick, i.e. this one. My friend I know is in the chat is going to remind me, please, afterwards to like make a community post and just link to at least the international version of this website where you can go in and choose your own little flag and it's all exciting. And then there's a quote at the bottom of the map, which I always think to myself, I'm going to put that on the wall, and then I think, yeah, it's motivating, but it's also like just heartbreaking. So sad. Right, so it says, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. So I've alluded to that last part. When one suffers, actually it's a different verse, but when one of us suffers, the whole church suffers. And I can't stand the thought that they're suffering because we've done something, like, I don't know, just don't like it. Thanks, or but yeah, I am. What can you say? Like, I don't even know I wouldn't know where to start in asking you, like, I asked for this, if you know what I mean. Like, I prayed for a focus and then I got one, but yeah, it's just too much, really. It's just too much now. It never ever decreases. The numbers, like I've got the full report on this computer somewhere, but I just haven't been able to get through even the first few paragraphs without just feeling so despondent. Like, not because I don't have Jesus, but because I've just had some stuff going on recently that's kind of, I don't know, like been draining my energy a little bit. But that shall all be rectified as soon as I stop coughing and get over this flu shizzles. So yeah, what else can I tell you? There's loads of little tiny stories and testimonies just in this book on its own. And that's not the only thing. You can get children's resources. You can get little prayer lists for kids and stuff. It's quite nice. Like, I don't know what they do in your country, as it were, but I don't think they do international shipping, as it were. But you can go ahead and have a look, and I'm sure it's something appreciable wherever you are, and it will be obviously in your own language if English isn't your first. So yeah, I reckon let's just have a scoot through the stats for Afghanistan while we're here. So the population is 39 million, and they have hundreds of Christians. We read, like, that's terrible. Even in North Korea, there's like 400,000 Christians out of 26 million, but these like 39 million peoples and just hundreds of Christians. And the leader is, I hope he never tries to say his name while he's had a drink. Right, hang on a minute. I'll tell you what his name is, because I've committed to the cause now. It's Hibatullah Akhundzada, potentially, mate. That's probably not what his mum calls him, to be fair. So their score of person, like, they've got a 98 score out of 100. There is no one with a higher score, that's for sure. So it is the number one on the Open Doors World Watch List for the very first time in its history. And even before the year that it's had in order to get it there, it was impossible to live openly as a Christian in Afghanistan. Persecution has only increased. It's not like it wasn't there and then it just popped out the clear blue sky. It was already pretty impossible to live openly as a Christian. And it's increased since the Taliban took over in August of last year. You may remember all the nonsense about, oh, they're different this time. No, they're just going to be like, I don't know, chilling, playing tunes. I don't know what crap they were, was being spoken. Largely peaceful terrorists, whatever it was. Yeah, so for one, the majority, the fact that it's such a majority Islamic nation to start with implies and is verified, I guess, by the statistics that most of the Christians are former Muslims. So it doesn't, potentially the Christianity isn't the worst thing about them in the eyes of, the secret police and all of those people, because just being an apostate is enough in certain corners of this little globe we live on. So leaving Islam is considered shameful, I read here. I think that's because they're being polite. It's considered a death sentence. Let's not be silly. And converts to Christianity have a double whammy, as it were. And they face the most violent and dire consequences if their faith is discovered, which is why we read of secret Christians. Either, these are their options, they flee the country if they have the option, or they die. That's it. So it's for each country, it gives you specific-ish prayers. So it says, please do pray for secret believers in Afghanistan, that they will be protected from the violence of the Taliban, obviously, that the Taliban leaders will uphold and preserve human life, and that God would turn their hearts from hate to love. I don't know how they're going to do that unless they come to Christ, but I guess that's encompassed within the prayer. And that, more practically, that the Open Doors, the partners who support Afghan refugees, will be filled with grace and love in order to serve them, humbly and edifyingly. So, okie dokie then. Thank you for the asterisks, Mohammed. I like the fact that you've censored your own. Thank you. Right. So, does anyone have any questions, for the love of Jesus, or just for me? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't, please don't feel bad, because you just don't, really. What's the point? I'll give you 10 seconds because I know there's a delay. I could sing a little song while I'm waiting, but I'm not Abbas on Christian Prince or anything. Thank you very much, Tori. No worries, Jordan. It's my pleasure. It's actually it's not a burden, but I mean the onus is on me. Like, I made a promise, and I never stopped thinking about it. I just sometimes it's like I feel like I'm just coming on and just strangling everyone with information, and yeah, it's only depressing if you look at it with like the way I do often, just with your own eyes, as it were. If you look at it in terms of Jesus, it's only to God's glory anyway. So, Armor of God is asking, do I think we should? I'm guessing you mean should we go back to basics with church gatherings as in the old days? Don't know how old you are. That's the thing, but not the old days, because it depends. So we've got a mid-range old days, which all right. I'm still going to do my little rant now. We've got the middle part, like literally the Middle Ages. I mean, the very first church, yeah, that would be lovely. But unfortunately for us, there's evidence of one of the first churches in Israel that I didn't get to see, but I hopefully will return and see that. That would be amazing. However, the church, like the subject of the video actually that we just did before I did the persecution stuff, yeah, it goes a bit wonky every time. There's like massive bureaucracy and I don't know, Nazi gold. No, I'm joking. Like, yeah, when the when the hierarchy is corrupted by whatever it happens to be, the message of the church, like things like the Enlightenment, even, at different times in church history, the church has been so invested in politics that it's been just muzzled, like it has no spiritual authority to speak from. I would say what we do is modify what we have now, or like, become forged again, as it were. I don't think I look good in sandals, to be honest. Oh my God. So I don't know. Small is okay, but you still need. Ephesians tells us, to some are given to be pastors and shepherds and preachers and teachers, and I can't remember the exact words. It's on my channel, funnily enough. It's on the about bit. So yeah, if you mean just like meeting up in a cafe, I don't know, because unless you're not in my neck of the woods, and there are some churches that are so ancient and beautiful that I would be, well, I wouldn't, if I had anything to do with it, I wouldn't let them close down, or, like, so that we could go back to small gatherings. But I don't know, you just have to pray about it and see where you're led. But I think that God meets you wherever you are, and he puts you wherever you're needed. And it might not be your need that's being fulfilled. It might be somebody else's who needs to hear what you've got to say. So if you don't do that, if you don't go to a church, you're sort of taking the opportunity for God to use you in that way, at least, away. If that answers you one bit without all the waffle. I think I said maybe something like that. I don't know. Yeah, there's merits and there's deficits to the idea. Thank you for asking. Lots of love. Right. Any more? Because that was, I just went off waffling there. Yes, Emmanuel, there is. Yes. And I also would like to pray for Simon, because to keep watch, haven't heard from him for a very long time. And I don't think anybody that I know has anyway. And I've been trying. So, yeah, Helium, I think I saw that story. Yeah, you get some kooky people around. Okay, so anywho, I know you are also chit-chatting to yourselves, but I'm going to draw this to a close because it was a bit impromptu. I didn't really think I was going to do a live stream. I'm always glad when I do, but beforehand, even when I'm not feeling poorly, I'm like, quite tired though. Just like whispers in my ear, and I start listening. Yes, to answer you really brief, yes, I believe in the separation of church and state. Like I just referenced, when the church is too heavily involved in politics, it becomes muzzled, doesn't have the authority of spirituality when it's too mired in nonsense. Like when it's putting up flags to weirdly socialist organizations and taking a knee, as it were, and not in a getting on your knees and praying fashion. I don't like that stuff. Jordan, I love you, chick. She's like, yeah, bye, okay. Thank you, my love, for the prompt. Oh, Cherokee. I haven't seen you for ages, lovey. No, villainous. No, he isn't. I just reeled through the list and no. Not wow. Not unless he's gone travelling. He wasn't previously. I'll chat to you in can message me if you want. You're very welcome, Tyler. Yeah, hopefully if I still feel average tomorrow I'll do another. All right, so with that, she waffled. I'll press the first button and yeah, I'm just happy you're all still here. Hopefully you're all well. And yeah, I oh bless you, Simon. All right, I will yeah, I'll see you all soon. God bless you and keep you till then. All right, take care. Bye bye.